Now, we live in a society where there's a big emphasis on freedom. Now, there's a lot of different definitions of what freedom is, but a lot of people these days would think that if you're still living at home with your parents, then dude, you're still a kid. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's right?
Well, I still live with my parents, so...
Me too.
You're such a kid. I'm joking.
Exactly, I think I'm still a kid.
Go and get your freedom, bro.
Well, no, I did live, so me and my wife, we did live out a year when I was studying in Iran, in Qom. And then when we came back to England, now I'm living with my parents. I guess it depends which society or culture you belong to as a background. I understand in some cultures it's looked down upon, but for us, you know, in the subcontinent, in the Pakistani culture, it's not something that's looked down. In fact, it's something very normal, and you know, that is something that is expected anyway. It's probably harder for you to move out.
But how would you deal with that? Because we're not in a Middle Eastern or Asian kind of background. So how do you combine those two mentalities when you're living in a Western country? Do you think there's any conflicts that are taking place there? Because a lot of the times you would go to school and you go to education, you go into education and they will tell you that this is your sense of independence, and if you don't live this way, then you're not an independent person.
Well, that is the Western society's thinking. I mean, once you hit 18, the kids are obviously, you know, sent out, do your own thing, get your own place. If you're going to live under my roof, then you have to follow certain rules, you have to pay rent, what have you. In the Eastern culture, it's completely different, because I know you're saying that you want to live with your parents is perfectly normal, and that is normal in the Eastern culture, don't get me wrong. It's a very common thing, but let's not forget that as we grow older, let's say we are in our 30s, our parents must be 50 or plus, you know, just to generalize. We feel the need, and we've been brought up this way, to take care of our parents. So maybe we're not living with our parents, but maybe our parents are living with us. You're all living under one roof, and you're taking care of one another, and that's that family environment that has been ingrained in us. You know, we've been embedded with this thought process, and I think it's a very good thing. Your parents, you know, the struggles that they went through to bring you up, and now when they're old and they kind of need your support, you don't want to toss them in a home, an elderly home, for example.
I mean, definitely it's tough, man, but then there's also the issue of privacy. I mean, at the end of the day, you're bringing a woman into the house. Inshallah, you know, all our mothers-in-law, they're all good women, but, well, our mothers are good.
These issues, obviously, you know, there's ways to deal with them.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not that we toss someone in, we put everyone in the same room and that's it, live.
Apparently in Pakistan and India, there are places like that, but that's not good. That's really the other end of the spectrum.
Well, you know, when you live together, you have to make certain rules and regulations. You have to manage. You have to find ways to manage and respect each other's privacy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't function together. You know, it's going to become very hard.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. And I think we as people, we lack communication skills. We don't know how to communicate with one another. We don't know how to get our thoughts out the way that we want them to be, you know, portrayed over. It's sometimes very hard for an elderly or a son or a daughter to speak to, you know, their parents back and forth, or even a husband and wife. I've seen this many times. They don't know how to communicate with one another, you know, and that causes problems. That causes assumptions to be made, and some assumptions you don't want to be made, as long as there was clear communication. And that comes with education. That comes with not necessarily education. You could be just a really outgoing person, a social person. You know how to take information out and explain yourself and explain others, which I think is a skill nowadays. And if a majority of the people, the public had that, I think it'd be less problems, especially with the mother-in-law and the daughter. There'd be less issues all around, and our family structure would be stronger, more robust. I totally agree with the joint family system going disarray, basically being disarrayed and going the wrong way. But people made it work back in the day. Why? Because their mentality was different.
But we're not back in the day, bro.
Oh, I'm just comparing and contrasting, you know. I'm just trying to understand why it doesn't work. And I think one of the key reasons is lack of communication, or the wrong type of communication. Instead of sitting someone down, talking to them nicely, sweetly, professionally, a little firmly, because if they've done something wrong, you have to reprimand them in a nice way, in the proper way. But if you just want to yell and scream at them because they don't even know why you're upset most of the time. They don't know what they've done to hurt you or to upset you, because you never actually told them. They don't know what your plans were. You know, you were thinking since morning, oh, I come home, I just want to chill at home, I just want to wind down or watch my favorite TV show and go to sleep. But obviously, perhaps someone else had a different story and they're like, I didn't cook today, so let's go out. And now you're obviously upset and you don't want to upset anyone else either, but then your whole mood's messed up. But then if you made the people aware at the right time, well in advance, to say, look, I'm feeling a bit tired, we had a busy couple of days last night, or a few nights ago, can we just chill tonight? Now, that's totally understandable. Who would not take that? I think anyone would take that in. So yeah.
I think brother mentioned a very important point, which is communication is key to success in anything, to be honest. It's vital.
Yeah.
And the other thing, for a joint family system, I think it's, which, like you said, why is it not working now when it previously, for centuries, it had worked?
Yeah.
I think maybe because we're starting to lack patience.
Yeah.
To live together as a society, as a joint family, as a community, patience is key. You have to be
100%.
patient with each other. You have to be patient, and with other people's behaviors and with how, because people react differently, people behave differently, people's personalities are different. So patience is key. I think maybe we're lacking patience.
I totally agree with him. I think patience is a virtue. I never actually got that, but I kind of get it.
You get it after marriage.
You get it after marriage, exactly. I think we live in a fast food nation where we don't want to get out of our cars. We want to go straight to a drive-through, have those ready-to-go meals, and consume them as quick as possible. We don't have time to sit and wait for you to cook from scratch. Just to give you an idea.
Instant gratification society.
What? Sorry?
The instant gratification society.
Exactly, and that's linked to patience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get me, bro? And
I mean, I get the whole thing of patience, but I'm just sitting here thinking about my own life, and I definitely wouldn't put my parents in a care home. No way that's happening.
No.
But me as an individual, I'm just thinking, would I be comfortable living with my wife and my parents at home? All in the same place for a long period of time? I don't know. I think personally for me it's more ideal to be living close to my parents, because that's what two of my sisters who are in the country, well, that's what they do. They live with my parents, and I haven't seen any kind of negativity that's come about from that. They get their space, we get ours. What do you think about that? Do you think that's also acceptable?
Yeah, it certainly is, and I think it comes down to the individuals. It comes down to the couples, like you mentioned, husband and wife situation. Would a wife want to live with the parents of the man and stuff? It depends on the upbringing that she's had, and obviously, if she's in a Western society, there is great possibility that she has not seen any of her siblings live together in a family system, and obviously, she's perhaps the only one that's come into a family system, and maybe may find it difficult. But then again, going back to communication, that's key. Sit down, discuss with one another, be fair and sincere to one another, and say, look, these are my parents. They're obviously your parents now. I have the utmost respect to them. I know they're getting older and what have you. Give them respect, that they're due. And obviously, I'm hoping you've married the right person who's able to grasp that very fairly easily and absorb that. And again, this is an opportunity, I think, living with your parents or your parents living with you, and a joint family system, as much as it's shunned upon, especially in the society that we live in the Western culture. I know Eastern culture, it's still quite common over there. As much as it's shunned upon, I think it's an opportunity to elevate yourself in the eyes of God, because you have different relationships and you have to deal with them separately. You're building yourself, you're developing yourself, you're enhancing your spiritual ability. This is an opportunity that Allah has put you in to test you and how you would behave.
Absolutely.
With
That's if you go
a
for
mother-in-law.
That's if you go for it, but just to clarify, we're not pushing any fatwas on people, so we're not telling you to just go live with your
No, I
wife
mean,
and your
this is
parents.
purely, this is purely my opinion. I finished off with mother-in-law. I don't want people to think that I have anything against a mother-in-law. I'm talking about my brothers-in-law, sister-in-laws, all the other side of the family, because I was introduced to a lot of people, and it was amazing to see that actually all these different personalities came into my life. Some I get along with instantly, some perhaps I would like to get to know a little bit better, and so on and so forth. And you got to look at it from a positive angle, and patience and communication. I think that's what we can derive from this.
Apart from that, I think there's a lot of help you can get from the experience of your parents who are now the elderly at home.
They're wise.
Wise. Just having the elderly at home is a blessing in itself.
Yeah.
there are things you may not know. For example, the tarbiyah of your children, upbringing of kids. We're new parents, new mother, new father, first time parents. Everything we learn is from our parents.
100%.
You know, when I had my son, it was my mother who helped us with everything. My mother, my father, and their experiences. Had we, and I often used to think that had I been alone, would I be doing the same thing with this much ease? You know, after having learned from my parents, having lived in this family and still living in this joint family system. But alhamdulillah, I mean, I still live in this, and you'd be surprised, you know, it's not looked down so much. I tell my friends at work, my colleagues, they understand, you know, they don't even react, or they don't even say anything offensive.
But that's because they're more mature, right? I mean, if you were to think back to your college and university days, is there not more pressure on people to become more independent from a younger age and go out and live and explore? And that's the whole kind of thing of freedom.
That's the immature age. When you reach the mature age.
But let's be real, bro. There's a lot of our brothers who are at that age. Not saying they're immature, but they're facing a lot of pressure, and because they're in those environments most of the time, they're gonna have to deal with that. So how would they deal with that? You know, what would you say to them?
That's a good question. You're talking about actually teenagers who are ready to sort of be at that age to move out.
So young men who they're not exactly teenagers, but they're basically becoming young adults.
And they want to move out. Is that what their idea is?
Well, they're being pressured into moving out because they want to be.
By whom? Their own parents?
No, by friends, whatever it is.
The society, the environment around them. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's peer pressure.
Peer pressure. That's with everything, not just with that.
I find it to be a great benefit. I don't live with my parents, but if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't mind. Whether you're single or you're married, financially it's a benefit, because if your parents are they have their own thing going on, most probably it's their own home that they've put on a mortgage, and allows you to save up for your future, for your kids' future. You know,
that's the bonus.
Huh?
That's the bonus right there.
That's the bonus right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I guess you are giving up a bit of your privacy, and you always have to be. But then again, that's family. It's blood.
That's just how it's going to be.
That's just how it's going to be. There's pros and cons to everything. And I don't know if I actually agree with that age of 18 and having these teenagers just being kicked out, so to speak.
I wouldn't say it's not about them being kicked out.
I don't know if they're ready though, because I think it depends on the individual person and their intellect, whether they are ready. Now, they could be ready at 18, they could be ready at 16. Some people are very mature, but then we have the other end of the spectrum where people need to be at least 25, 26 to understand what life is. And having the wrong person leave at the age of 18 can be very devastating for them. They could mess up. They could go into the wrong line of drugs and what have you. And we see that time and time again. Because they have the wrong clique. They hang out with the wrong circle of friends. There's nobody really there to guide them. Nobody wise enough to help them understand. And that's where parents come in. That's another benefit of parents. Again, going back to what you said.
I mean, at that age, they may not even be mentally ready to move out, or they may not even be equipped with the instructions and guidelines that parents give if you live with them. And a child like that who's out alone now is a lost child.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50, it's a risk. Either he goes down the wrong side of the things, or he saves himself from all the corruption of society.
Oh yeah.
But we're not saying that you have to live home, get married, and you must live at home. This is just how it is in our culture, and I feel that my parents having brought me up and all the things they've sacrificed for us, I'm sure I can sacrifice a little bit for them. The hadith says you can never pay back your mother, your father, but we're trying to do a little bit. Whatever we can do for them, that's what we're trying to do. Giving up a little bit of privacy, a little bit of time, and sacrificing a little bit of patience, these are just virtues. You have to do these little things for your family. Otherwise, you can live separately, how it is in the West. But for me, alhamdulillah, living in this family, I feel it's more fun, I think.
It's been deep, but that's all we have time for. So until next time.